Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I wanted to follow up on the E.A. Koetting Secret Life video I made a few days ago with some added information and some corrections. After reading information on the web, and you have to go through article after article to find the little bits and pieces, and I'm just not going to spend that much time here. It really isn't that important. He has a fairly good following in the occult circles. Occultism has turned to black magic as its preferential area of research to a large degree. It's really all about nastiness and pushiness, and of course it's dealing with base values: sex, money, power, violence. So people get into that, and we can't underestimate the fact, and that's what I said in the last videos. In fact, we can't underestimate the fact that Koetting, who also calls himself Eric Koetting, but that's not his real name, obviously, but whatever that means. That's his chosen name he uses business for, etc. People like him. He's charismatic in general. Now, how long all this is going to go on, we just don't know. But he's been doing fairly well in occultism and the business world from what I can see. He's got good people behind him. They know how to promote him. He's even on Yahoo Finance with the announcement of his books. Well, how bizarre is that? Is that something that Yahoo, now I'm assuming he paid for that. If he didn't pay for that and got it from one of his satanic buddies, it's kind of interesting. Is that what you as a Yahoo Finance reader want to read about, the publication of black magic books? It just shows you how this has gotten into everybody's consciousness and should be noted. Now, let's go back to a little bit of history here, because I was wondering what was happening with these gun charges, etc. They didn't make any sense. And of course, here again, Koetting lied about this, saying that, well, his mother lives in a town where you have to have a gun. Well, you don't live there, so that doesn't make any sense either. The other saying that he doesn't understand why he would be charged with gun charges. And there's an awful lot of stinky black garbage behind all this, and I'm not sure how much he's paid lawyers or how much is in the background. You got to remember, this guy is connected to a whole series of criminal, satanic network, I allege. There's this whole network of these people. They work together. They've been doing this for many years. They're led by organized crime, particularly the Latin kings, and a lot of other people in the industry, I allege. So the whole idea is that we got to understand that to be honest. But let's get into some personal data here. He lists himself on LinkedIn as a sole proprietor at E.A. Koetting LLC. So he has an LLC apparently he's doing business as E.A. Koetting. He's got an LLC out of Hurricane, Utah. Now, I don't know if that's a real place or not, or he just threw that in. He's claiming that no one else is running it with him. Well, we don't know, and I don't know if his LLC shows other people. And I don't know if sole proprietor is the correct. He's the main or only stockholder. Sole propriety is not really a proper business term. And he started in 2012 to present. So he's been going 9 years and 2 months from Utah. He's been based in Utah this entire time. That's where he was cleaning carpets and where his parents live in this whole area there. So he has connections there and works with those that area. And he likes that area because it is rustic and there is large open spaces and primitive wilderness. Well, actually, I guess it is now over 10 years that he's been doing it. He apparently went to 2 high schools, the Pine View High School, and this is all listed on LinkedIn. This is nothing special, and I assume this information is relatively correct. From 1997 to 1999, he went to Pine View High School. Then he went to El Dorado High School. I'm assuming that's all in Utah here. And he lists his activities as extra activities as naval or Navy Junior Reserve Officers Training Card. So he's in the basically what's considered the ROTC in high school, and he was in there for 2 years. So he has this military slant, and of course from there apparently, I don't know how soon it was, he claimed he joined the Marine Corps, which is a division of the Navy for people that don't know that. So he had this training, he was thinking of doing that, he wanted a military career, and I think that tells you the kind of person he is. Not only is he a person who likes to be told what to do, but he wants to get in the thick of it supposedly. So it's very hard to say what that means. A lot of people have that, but he has stated, as I mentioned before, that he couldn't get anywhere in the Marine Corps. He couldn't get, I'm assuming, the promotions, move up to where he wanted to, and I've heard this from many, many people. It doesn't mean that he's a particular bozo. I think he's a kiss-ass more than anything else, but he couldn't get anywhere with that. Even though we have all these wars going on, you think there would have been opening, but maybe that's another reason he left. Maybe when he found getting in the thick of it means bullets coming at you, that he wasn't too. Who knows? It's all speculative, people. We don't know. You know, years ago I tried to talk with Koetting and debate him, and of course he's a coward, as they all are, these Satanists. They refuse to debate me whatsoever. And of course, I'm well known in occult circles, and they don't want to do anything to promote me or talk with me because they're cowards ran by this Black Lodge Satanist criminal group that I allege all these people are involved with. It's not too difficult to trace it. These people are pretty openly stating they're Satanists, and out there working with radionic people in magical circles, etc. They're being published by all these publishers, Bear Press, Llewellyn, Wisner, I guess it's Red Wheel now. All of these people have some sort of connection to satanic publishers, authors, etc. I should say publications. So this is it. And nobody hides this now because nobody cares. You tell somebody this guy is a Satanist, so what? You mean, is that like a Republican? Well, it is kind of like a Republican, but not quite. So they may be better than Republicans. But the bottom line is that nobody cares. Now, let's get into these gun charges here, because apparently there's other issues here that shows you what's going on. Now, he claims after he was homeless for a while, apparently living in the Las Vegas area. He was active there with different matches, not the OTO, the Golden Dawn there, and which he still keeps friends with, as far as I know up to this time. I don't think they've had any splits. So that's where he learned his kind of ritual magic from. And then, of course, this turned into dark stuff that he himself claims in a video, which I have, if anybody wants to see it, that he was trained by this division that KARL WELZ was advertising at the time, a real black magic. Because, he came out as this. I found that out in my organization. But so he's kind of combined that to get ritual stuff, and there's something going on, but he's trying to space himself from WELZ now. So I don't know what's going on. He's not promoting his products. He's not doing other things, and I'm feeling it's probably he's been told not to do that. But he did come out and make this video in his words. So don't blame me for any of this stuff. I'm not making up any stories. Everything, I am a reporter here. I'm reporting what's on the net. I don't have to tell lies because this story is like they say, truth is stranger than fiction. So what happened there? Well, we don't know what and I'm not going to spend any more time on him unless something comes up as special. The reason I went back to him was because he's been linked, his teachings have been linked to a murder in Britain by a guy who went out and stabbed 2 women to death, and then went home and went on his forums and everything else. Well, that's not his fault. And as a business person and a teacher, I try and be fair. It has nothing to do with him. He didn't tell him to go out and do that. A lot of people don't understand that. But if you tell people to go out and murder somebody, it's just like you murdering them yourself. Few people understand that Charles Manson never murdered anybody in the murders that are famous. He was convicted of murdering people because he stated or told them to go out to do that. That's conspiracy to murder, and it's just as if you pulled the trigger or stabbed somebody. I don't know if people are aware of that. But Manson was never on that crime scene, and there's been talk that he may have murdered people in his entire life, but he certainly was never arrested for any of those and convicted. He was convicted for conspiracy to murder. So people need to understand that as well. There's a big difference there. So if you plan to murder somebody and you tell somebody, well, I think it's a good idea you go and kill those people, you're just as held responsible as if you did it. So, but he certainly didn't do that. But, his books, obviously, there's a fine line there. He has stated that you can use his books to kill people. Well, that's part of their belief system. And the problem is he's not doing it in a moralistic way. I'm a strong believer in retribution and justice, and we have products that help people do that. Spiritual. And it is up to you personally to do these kinds of things. So the whole idea is that you have to, and if you are going to go out and hurt people that are undeserving of that using spiritual tools, well, these kind of things will backfire on you and will cause you problems in the future. But should you stamp out evil, people who victimize you, this world of no justice? Should you ignore it? Well, that's why we have no justice, is because people are ignoring it. So you should do what you can in a proper fashion based in the legalities and the spiritual empowerment of this society. I mean, that just goes without saying. Even though those in power murder, torture, rape all the time and get away with it. That's the way it goes. So, but these are not things that the individual. So, the fact that some guy out there, and of course, Satanists are going to be unstable guy, just like EA himself. He's not a very stable guy. He's not coming from a background that's normal. So let's go into that again. Apparently, he was adopted. He grew up as a Mormon in the Mormon church, going to ROTC at his local high school, Navy ROTC at his local high school. So this guy, this is kind of a white bread American type. What he found out is that, I'm not sure why he didn't go on to college or something. Probably couldn't afford it. Maybe he wasn't interested. So this is kind of a pretty much white bread, low middle class dude. I'm not sure what his family does. I'm not sure what they do for a living and all that stuff. We just don't know. So, but I'm assuming we would have heard already. They're probably not professionals or anything else. They're living in kind of an outward place. Who knows what they do and what comes from there. We don't know any of that. I'm not sure his family stuff has anything to do with anything since they're not really involved with him. But I'm just trying to piece together, well, who is this guy? So he was homeless for a while, but there's a catch here. The point is that he has been arrested before and convicted of some crime. And again, I'm not going to spend hours finding out what that is. Apparently, this is a felony that he was convicted of because his right to own a firearm has been revoked. If you get a felony, you cannot own a firearm. Now, it's interesting how you look at that, because what most guys do that are firearm people that get felonies is they have guns, which they can't have, but they don't own them. The wife owns them, somebody else owns them, and of course this is what you commonly do. So I don't know where that gun was, whose name was on it, but he's not supposed to have a gun because he's a convicted felon. He didn't, and this is very typical of him, he makes all sorts of ridiculous statements that basically can be found out. He said his records disappeared and he got off for a crime. And he'll probably say that was a different crime, but he certainly was convicted of a felony and he lost his right to have a weapon. So when they found a weapon on him and knew that he was a felon, well, that means that you have broken the law. I'm assuming he was convicted of drug charges. He seems to be a drug user, and most people are. Drugs are everywhere. Drugs really are, in many ways, an instantaneous escape into another world. The problem is you can't stay loaded all the time, so drugs become a brick on your back, and they don't solve your problems ultimately. Now, if you could stay drunk, loaded, high all the time, well, you're still dependent on a substance, but maybe it would have some value. But you can't. It deteriorates the bodies and you don't function well. He appears to me, in my opinion, when I've seen him in a lot of his videos, to be really kind of whacked out. Other ones not, but that's typical. So he has taken hallucinogens, uppers, and other things. So it appears he was caught with a variety of drugs, as well as finding a gun in his house, and they arrested. Now, there's a little controversy here. News stories say that that was his wife. Other stories say that that was his girlfriend, for whatever that means. Again, I'm just trying to get a full picture of who this guy is. It's interesting. You know, this is in our industry, kind of. And who is this guy? What is he up to? And he has made a major effect on the, quote, occult scene, particularly the left-handed path. He's the number one guy out there. He's selling huge amounts of products. He's been successful now for many years. He started about 10 years ago, and it appears he's doing quite well, and he charges a lot of money for his ritual services, etc. So one of the things about that is you don't need 50 people to come to you. You know, you get 2 or 3 people when you charge them $1,500. That's quite an income. Most people don't make more than $3,000 to $5,000 a month. And if you are to do 3 rituals, you're almost up to that. Which you would think with his expanse that people are hiring to do that. He also gives consultations for $1,500. He's got other people that work with him, which I'm sure he takes a sizable cut. So he's not doing $20 rituals out there like a lot of people do, or $200 rituals, or those kind of things. He's doing very high priced rituals. And we don't know what the success rate or anything else is. I mean, he's really not achieved much through his magical power. He has people behind him that are marketing him, and he's done a good job. Now, the bottom line is he still presents an image. He speaks well. He has a certain amount of sincerity and credibility to him, and I think he's kind of charismatic, likable. So he doesn't come off like a nut job. He's very, very coached in this. I've noticed that and how he's changed a little bit over the years. Now he feels like he's more empowered, and he's getting a little more nasty and arrogant, but he works very hard at not coming off arrogant and self-important, and that's because he's coached. He's not talking off the top of his head like I would do with everything. He's reading teleprompters. These are all things that he is helped with by this bigger, larger community. So he's the MC, as I said before. He's the front man. I think he does do some writing. Certainly the writing that he does is not profound whatsoever. There's no insights. He takes old stuff, changes it a little, but people tend to like his sword and sorcery style. As he said, I think it's kind of childish. Now, going back to that, so he was arrested and convicted before of what is a felony. And as such, he lost his gun rights, and that is on record. Well, why is that important? Well, when he was initially arrested, people said that because, particularly in Utah, who is a strict religious state and against drugs, I think that legal marijuana, medical marijuana, has just been made legal there, and it's unlikely that we're going to see recreational use in that state, or at least not soon. I doubt it. They don't even allow alcohol, so they certainly don't want recreational use. Now, in terms of medical marijuana, I'm not sure if it's legal there or not, but there's certain talk of that, and that's how they sneak it in everywhere. It's hard to say, well, this really helps sick people, and say, no, no, no. Well, of course, that's what most Christians do. They don't want you to have medical care. They don't want you to have benefits to take care of your family or everything else, because Jesus wants you sick and dead. So the whole idea is that, well, that's not unusual. It is in the fact of that. So drugs in Utah have much stronger penalties. you have to enforce things. So I'm assuming while the rest of the country is stoned and riding around with pounds of marijuana in their cars and on their person, if you go drive from California or even Nevada, which borders that state, where it's legal to have marijuana, you're in trouble. And that's one of these problems with the not making this a federal, decriminalizing it federally. Because you go from one state to another, you're going to be a victim of that law. Don't be going to Utah with a bunch of marijuana. You're in trouble. So this is not a joke. Now, how the courts can enforce these things, just like in the draconian laws that you'll find through most of Europe, like Spain and so many other countries, have very serious laws on the books. But apparently this is not enforced because there's an awful lot of marijuana in Spain. But if they want to hassle you, you can go to prison for a long time. That's not a joke. So that didn't disappear. So he's going to claim it's something else, but he didn't use his magic so that he was not prosecuted. He was prosecuted and he was convicted. Now, when he went to court this time, they were saying that he could get as many as 5 to 10 years. Because he had priors and because he had a fair amount of this variety of drugs. So theoretically, if we're going to believe the reporting, is that he could have got 5 years or more. From what I can see, well, of course, he did what everybody does. And of course, apparently he's had a good lawyer and all the things that go with that. He certainly has enough money to pay lawyers. So the idea is that he got into a plea agreement, obviously, like everybody does. People don't want to spend their time with these court cases. It's kind of a goofy little issue. They certainly didn't take the gun ownership, if he owns it, seriously. He didn't come out and say he doesn't own it. He came out with a bullshit story instead of saying to the fact that, look, I'm a convicted felon. I wasn't supposed to have a gun, but there was one in my house that my wife owns or girlfriend. That's what he should have said. But he's not going to do that because he doesn't want to tell anybody he has a criminal record. He tells people that he's had problems in the past and the record's disappeared. More of his comic book sword and sorcery writings. Well, they obviously didn't disappear, at least not in that case where he was actually convicted. I'm assuming all these things, as I said, are minor offenses, and I'm sure they're connected to drugs, etc. So I don't think he was connected to any violent crimes or anything else. If he was, he probably would be in big trouble now and would have been sent to prison. So he made a plea agreement, and he, as I said, someday I'll look that up, or if someone knows out there, please contact me or write it in the comments. What happened what did he get at trial? What was he saying? So he made a plea. When he went to court in Utah, he pled guilty to all charges. And this is what you do, because then everybody is sanctioned. Meaning the fact the police, the courts, we didn't do anything wrong. You didn't. We did our job. You admit the fact that you are guilty, and everybody's happy. And then they give you a much reduced sentence. So I'm assuming they put him on probation for 5 or 6 years. I don't know. We'll have to figure, as I said, we don't know the actual things, but I have read that he pleaded guilty to all this. So the records didn't disappear. The demons didn't come in and change everybody's mind, and he was let go and fall. They had him dead to rights. They have a gun. They have all these drugs. How is that possibly going to change? Magically, you can't make stuff like that disappear. What you basically do, and I'm sure he would say it, is that what they did is got him off scot-free. And apparently he did. I don't know if he was fined anything, but basically he got a slap on the wrist. Now, that in itself, which is real-world manipulation, is a show of power. Now, was it power of an attorney and his money? Were there spiritual powers involved in that? I don't know. I'm not sure that anything would have changed if rituals are done or not, because there's no outcome there that is any much difference. You could technically have been slapped down. They could have went after him with both feet. He's a Satanist, everything else, and railroaded him. And I've seen this happen with other occultists. So they could have railroaded him. They didn't. So something is going on here now, whether it's him or his lawyer or a combination of both, which I'm assuming it is. He got off with a slap on the wrist and nothing happened. And he's operating, I don't think, well, he did spend a little bit of time until he was bailed out in prison, but that's the normal way to do it. He hasn't spent any time that I know of in prison other than that. And no, they didn't give him a month or two or anything else as far as I understand. I don't know. That could have happened. Maybe he got a month or two in prison. I don't think so. I think we would have heard about that. So basically, he was put on probation. These obviously are not serious charges. It just depends on whom is handling them and what they want to do with them if they want to make them serious. So that's the real story there, which I didn't really give false information. I really didn't know. And that's what's happened with him. Now, the bottom line is that he's been around for 10 years. He's sold a lot of books. He makes good money. I'm assuming by now he's making quite a bit of money monthly. He's constantly hawking his products. They're out there everywhere. He's constantly sending out emails at least twice a week to promote things. He has all these services, He has a lot of following. As I mentioned before, almost everybody I talked to who's an occultist has bought his material. So if that's the case, he sold a lot of books. Now, there isn't much profit in books. That's the problem with books. You write books to promote your ritual services, which, he takes down 1,500, 2,000 or more for rituals. That's what you do. That's what writing books is all about, because you're not going to make a lot of money off of books. Some people have said his books are high priced. Well, this is rare information. I've heard the same story with my books. Quite frankly, every book that I sell should be really selling for $300 to $500. These are instructional manuals. Not only that, they're charged, they're empowered, they help you as soon as you get them. It's a big, big difference between buying a romance novel or a sword and sorcery book or a detective novel or even a cooking book of common stuff and getting something that's supposed to change your life. These are empowerments, and they are sold very cheaply, no matter whom writes them. So if you do a ritual out of a book that you bought for $3 and you get a job or make money, well, that's a hell of a deal, isn't it? Well, the bottom line is, so that there's nothing to be criticized him there. He has PDFs. I think he has some paperbacks. He also has more expensive hardcovers, and people like to collect this stuff. And some of his editions are these higher quality type books. But the problem is, as I've always said, you can wrap a turd in anything. It's still a turd. His writing is just not very profound. The average person may find that, but it's a big yawn when I read his books. And he's got other authors that he works with and everything else of this combination effort. And he likes to put together these anthologies, getting different people writing chapters. Well, that's all good, and these do sell. But, a lot of the times they're limited editions, and he's got like 3,000, 4,000 of them. Well, that's not a lot of books. So if you sell those out, you make $30,000, $40,000, and that could be in a year, 2 years, who knows. So the whole idea is that that's not a great accomplishment to do. So he's not selling huge amounts of books, is what I'm telling you. But he's doing okay. He has a pretty loyal following that go with it, but there's also a lot of people don't like him. But a lot of people don't like anybody. Certainly he's a typical Satan. He comes off like that. He wants to come off tough. He's trying to put together an organization. He knows a lot of people that he works with that want to train under him. This all shows that this person is successful. But again, he wasn't successful on his own. His website, his promotions, all the things that really make you successful are done by the background people who market him. If you've got good marketing, you can sell most anything. And of course, he has to sell it, and he does. So we have to give him credit for that. He's a good MC. Now, the other dark aspects is he seems to be connected with the he's been connected to the Temple of Blood, the Order of Nine Angels. They have written, at least the Order of Nine Angels I've seen, they've written books, etc. As I said, I'm not interested in this stuff. I don't have a interest in working with demons. I don't believe they help you. I don't think they do anything. This is antisocial behavior to try and think you're powerful in dealing with things. The bottom line is that while there are all sorts of dangerous demonic spirits that can mostly hurt you and others, the benefits is hard to say. But there certainly are these energies out there, and it's not really my cup of tea to deal with them. I use more positive things. If I want to do a justice spell, I use St. Michael, Thor, other things that have these kind of strong positive retribution, justice energies, and not these lower levels. There's also a lot of nasty death energies and other things that you can throw at bad people. But the point is these two groups have been noted, particularly, I guess, the Temple of Blood, as a violent organization. Now, it has been claimed that these were online organizations, particularly the Order of Nine Angels, are moving from online recruiting to real-life murder. They are also basic, your typical things that come out there, Nazi Satanists again. So it's amazing how all that blends together. Not really, because that's what the Nazis were. They basically are Arabic Satanists, and that's where that whole tradition comes from. So the Nine Angels, like so many of these groups, it's very interesting. They tend to come from Britain, and was started, you can read about them if you wanted. The Order of Nine Angels, they were started in Britain by this woman. They're claiming that they mixed Nazism, Aryan stuff. They believe that they came from outer space, which could possibly be true, but who knows all this stuff. They have supposedly, and this is where things, they're mixing magic and Nazism and everything together. This is all how these things get very convoluted. You can't figure out where there is. So, and of course, occultism now is out there everywhere. It's not hard to find. So, they claim to be, they have been alleged to carrying out acts of human sacrifice, embracing political extremism, committing crimes, and violence. We don't know. There's a lot of talk like this, and this is from Seweropedia. So we just don't know. They claim that they are involved with all these far-right groups who basically are very violent. And they apparently were founded in Wales. And they are hooked up to all the pre-Christian stuff. There's also a real problem with these people, as they seem to be hooked up in a very bizarre way. They're hooked up and through this Islamic reality. And they dress like Islam. They have these kind of radical, and of course this makes sense because you got to remember that the so-called Aryans are Arabs. They come from Iran. They don't like to be called Arabs, but the point is they're Middle Eastern people. And I see a picture of one of their followers, David Might, and he's holding prayer beads. He's wearing an Islamic hat, etc. So, these are the kind of things you run into. And it's very interesting that these neo-Nazi groups now have not really honed in on, quote, white power as you get in America. They're tuning into a bizarre mixture, and this mixture is not only black magic, Satanism, and everything else. They are tuned into Islam. And of course, they are, it is not surprising with the violent behavior of a certain portion of them. And of course, there's so many Islamic people now. They're going to be the number one group on the planet in about 50 years and will be the number one religion. And of course, they sanction these kind of things in the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that if you're against Islam, even if you're another Muslim, you can be killed, and that's in their books. Now, in the U.S., they have, and this is mostly based over there, but they have books, they have other things. And of course, they slop over. The U.S. based one is called The Temple of Blood, which published a number of texts through a particular press that Koetting was connected to. And there's another California-based White Star exception, which has been designated as a one of these connecting groups. So it's very interesting as you run into this, and the haunt of the evil energy from the Middle East continues to come and continues to plague the world. And they are setting, soon India will have the largest Islamic population in the world, be the predominant religion there. It is all over the place. People don't understand there are more Muslims in Asia than there is in the Middle East. And this is a serious problem. There's a radical problem with these people. They have no problem, and their clergy tells them to kill and murder if it's appropriate, and it's not thought about it. And this is growing like leaps and bounds because of the kind of primitive reality that Islam preaches. Again, it's kind of a very low-level based idea of how to work your life. You dominate everybody, you work in your little gangs, you have life and death control over your family, particularly women, and you use and abuse them however you want. There's all sorts of kinky sexuality going on in Muslim realities, and all this stuff about not drinking and not having sex is nonsense. It's victimized sense, and a lot of their women are horribly sexually abused. And of course, they throw around the term left-hand path. So anytime you hear that, left-hand path is Satanism. So a lot of people want to say that that's some sort of left-hand path is Satanism. Plain and simple. So is chaos magic and so many other things. You have to be very careful. These are little code words that they want to move around. So the whole idea is they are left-hand path practitioners, and there's a lot of people out there in the public eye right now who are doing this. Plain and simple. These groups tend to be very radical, and they're not the more corporate Temple of Set types who have been linked to a lot of strange things as well. At least Aquino was, and certainly we wonder what the rest of them are doing. But they tend to be a corporate, write their little books that they're the adversary. They want to step outside society, and of course the Church of Satan, which has always kind of been this this organization of intellectual realities that they're into. Might is right, you're a sexual being and all this stuff. And the Satanic Bible is written, it's very Machiavellian. A lot of it makes sense, of course. Somebody hurts you, you hurt them back. We all follow those things, but they're very intellectually based and don't see it. But their members were linked to a lot of different crimes at that time as well. Because you're going to attract these kind of people, and they're going to go out and commit crimes, and then it's going to look bad on you. Now, nobody in the other than Michael Aquino, the head of the church, for what I know, the Temple of Set has not been directly linked to too many crimes. They tend to be the more educated. They're not getting involved with that. But, they're into very kinky sex. We don't know what's going on. Aquino was accused of being involved with child molestations. That was never proven. That's all very alleged. We don't know really what happened there. There's a lot of shocking evidence from testimonies from children that stated they were taken to his home and could identify it. We just don't know. The Army said that they have plenty of cause to throw him out of the military and even prosecute him. But they threw him out of the military, but they did not prosecute him. So we don't really know what the full story there is. It's very easy that they're going to accuse you of these things as well. And of course, they're all hooked into this Luciferian Nazi reality, which they know absolutely nothing about, and they don't really know what these. But what's interesting is that there's a whole group of these that are Islamic, and they praise Osama bin Laden. So, you've got this weird mix now because there's so many Islamic people now. There's so many people coming from the Middle East, and they have huge families that this has now been brought in. And it's very interesting, and I've been telling people this for years, but nobody has any problem whatsoever being a Nazi and taking in Arabs. No, whatsoever. And of course, what do Arabs do? They murder Jews. So, this is how these things work. So it's very interesting, and I've been telling people that for years. And this, the fact is that all these people, the Order of Nine Angels encourages its member to adapt insight roles, meaning you infiltrate, in anarchist, neo-Nazi, and Islamic groups in order to disrupt modern Western society. So, who are you going to use? Who are out there who have a lot of this? And, to mix in occultism is just flavoring these very misunderstood realities that go on there. So, and the blending, which I warned people of this, the blending of this Islamic and their huge families and their taking over of countries in the world in another 20 years is going to be a serious problem. They're going to be well organized, well funded to do whatever they want, and this is already happening in a lot of parts of the world. So things don't look good for another 20 or 30 years because nobody's doing anything about this. But I do find it fascinating that this new Satanism, which is basically Judeo-Christian based, is being embraced by radical Islamics and in general, because these people are fighting society and they are fighting you as well. They want their church-run society. So it's amazing how all this blends in. But let's go back to our little buddy here, little Eric Koetting. So, that's what it's all about, but he's apparently, but I don't know how much he's linked to that. I don't think he has time to do any of that nonsense. He talks to these people because they are allies of his. They buy his books. They see him as one of them. I'm not sure he sees, I don't think, I can't believe Koetting thinks he's part of them. Is he that radical? He does have a military background. He'd be in the military today, killing people and murdering for a fake god and a fake flag today if he could. So he has this military mindset, and that's why I bought that up. So this isn't a guy that just went into occultism like so many sorcerer types that want to conjure up spirits. They're not very physical. This is a guy who's very physical. He went, so he claims, into the Marine Corps. And as such, was the more radical of the militaries, where you're on the ground, face to face with the enemy, boots on the ground people. The Marines are there, they're your shockwave troops. So, this is what he was trained in. I don't know what he did in the military or not, but the bottom line is, so he has that military aspect. So, him combining with these other groups or seeking their support and vice versa, it kind of makes sense. How much he's involved in. I think he makes too much money to get involved in those kind of things, but he certainly is going to give mouth support to them, I believe. So, and I'm sure that he's working with them in some ways, but I can't believe that he's stupid enough to get involved with some of these dangerous things. And he's already had legal troubles. He's at the point right now that he's making good money. He has good success. His life is pretty damn good. I can't believe he's going to go out there and get involved in these things. People that are doing this stuff are radical people that have very little to lose. And of course, that's what it really comes down. How radical do you want to get? And you have to look at your life and say, do you want to give up your life? Do you want to be in a fight? Do you want to potentially die or kill others and get thrown in prison or get labeled? You have to look at your life. And these kind of people that are out doing these things don't have much. The Europeans, to a large extent, have taken the Muslims and stuck them in a bunch of ghettos. This is what they did in France. And this is one of the greatest recruiting grounds for radical Islam. They have nothing. They don't let them out. Norway, Sweden, they've all done this. They push them in little ghettos and give them minor opportunities. So this happens all over. And of course, we have other places. Germany has tens of millions. I don't know, there's 30 million Turks and Muslims in Germany. They see them as brothers and always have. And this is another misunderstanding of what's going on. So there's a huge support for these people, and all the terrorists around the world, basically, and particularly 9/11, all started in Germany. This is a fact again. So you got to remember, these are the breeding grounds, and they're doing this deliberately. This is who they're aligning to, and they always have been. And their goal, again, is to do the typical that they failed in many wars, or actually for the last 1,000 years of trying to conquer places, which they really couldn't. Now they're doing it with banks instead of tanks. That's how it works. And there's some nasty things. Now, the fact that people are adopting occultism, and we've had the right-wing churches that have had this as well. The so-called white supremacists, those have all died out apparently. They've been harassed. They're very dependent on leaders. They were very rotten people. I met many of them. They were just not good people. They fought among themselves. They were very cheap. They were screwing around. All the stuff that goes on with these kind of people. And you're going to get the same thing in these other groups that you get involved in. So to get back to the subject here in terms of the catch up here, and unless something more interesting comes, that's it for a while, is the reason that he had problems and was arrested on gun charges as well, is that he's a felon. This is not the first time. He has priors, as it says online. Now, I don't know how many priors he has. I bet he has quite a few misdemeanors he's been arrested for, plain and simple. So he was convicted of a felony, lost his gun rights, and then this was the problem when he went to court. But he got off virtually scot-free. I see no jail time. I'm sure he got some sort of fine, which I'm sure was menial. So this whole thing, which is supposed to have been staged as well, the background people that are controlling him and work within that society set him up for this so that he would be shown that if you don't obey what we tell you to do, we can get you anytime. So that's the background story here, and I think that's important to understand, that there are backgrounds. His website and everything else, he doesn't have skill to do any of that stuff. He knows nothing about computers. This is all done for him. His website was designed, and I forget the person's name, it's not that too difficult to find out, set him up in terms of did all his work for him and where he's connected to and what groups he's connected to. But this guy put up a relatively slick website, which, as I said, is very video dominated, what people like. You want to click on this, you want to click. I don't particularly like his website. Some parts of it are really good. Other parts I don't really find very interesting. But he promotes his products. He's pushing, of course, his expensive ritual services. You have to live. People want to criticize him for selling books and charging a certain amount of money. Why, do you do that with your doctor? With the people that build your house and everything else? It's nonsense. He is a big shot, and he charges lots of money, and he apparently gets it. Now, that's the way it is. Should he work for $50 for a ritual? Nonsense. Generally, you don't do that type of stuff when you reach a certain level. So that's all nonsense. So he's running a business. You have to have money to have a car, a house, and to live. And that ain't cheap. So you're looking at a minimum of $3,000 to $5,000 a month to get by. So, depending particularly where you live. He lives in a cheap area, but that doesn't matter. You still have to have that kind of money to pay your bills. So that's all bogus nonsense, and certainly is not. But he spends most of his time trying to make money, which he claims he doesn't want to do. Another one of his many misstatements that he's going out there and stating that, oh, I don't need money, I can get all I want. Well, it's just not true. He's constantly trying to make money, and he's constantly charging as much money as he possibly can. So it's just not the truth. So just like he's charted to put that gun charge nonsense that, why this? You got to own a gun where mommy lives. No, you don't own a gun where. You can't break the law. In the town where his family is required to own a gun, I'm sure that isn't meant for past felons who are not allowed to own guns. They're not going to tell people to break the law. So that's a bogus thing that he came out with, instead of saying that he had priors and wasn't allowed, because that made him look bad. So he played that game, but that's very typical of the way these people work and the way he works. All of his stuff is very contrived. I saw a video of him doing a ritual, and it was very well filmed. He paid a guy a good amount of money. They set up all these torches out in the desert, a circle, and he had a podium. And he called this demon, and then he would go to the book and write down what he saw. But you didn't see anything. The actual demon that he claims was there. He claims demons have kicked my ass, all the things he does. which is really Hollywood comic book stuff. There's no physical evidence of any type of energy manifestation whatsoever. And there's lots of ways these can manifest, and the actual seeing of spirits is extremely, extremely rare. What you do is feel their presence, hot, cold, things knock over. These are very, very common. I actually have things up that show energy balls coming out. Now, this is very common as well. Energy balls coming out of books where spirits are in. And we have a special energy ball video of a vampire spirit that was filmed in, I believe, the Trinidad area that we have had online for many years. Now, this shows something that is very amazing. And, of course, there were after results to that. There was people showed bruises that these entities, after they entered their house, did to them. So it's very interesting that you see these little balls of energy, which is classic spirit energy manifestations at a high level. People turn into these spirits, they then go after people. These are real. Now, this is very difficult, and there's ways to counter these things. But the point is that these things are real. He has none of it. If he's able to produce spirits the way he talks about, he should be able to at least show some outwardly manifestations. There should be energy balls. There should be pictures that show glowing or ghost-like objects. You know, we're not talking about getting a clear picture here. Those are very rare. But we're talking about showing energy images. He has none of this. For him to run back and forth to where this demon was, then write what he saw in a book. You know, they staged this stuff. This is all very Hollywood produced. And it was done well. Dark, a bunch of torches out there. Very typically Koetting with his backing. So, I don't know, I doubt if it came from him, but again, he's being coached by all these people who have excellent ways of doing things. They have the money to produce things, to do these kind of, to put on this show. But it's comical once you get to it. But, you know, if you do it well enough, you kind of pull it off. It's like a lot of these reality shows. I think they have the hunt for Bigfoot and stuff, and you never see Bigfoot, but it's on now for like 8 years, and the show is kind of interesting. I mean, they're so good with these reality shows that they can make drama out of everything. They have the hunt for treasure on Oak Island, which I find interesting as well, but they never find anything. They virtually have found zero, yet the show is kind of interesting. So there's a way of that doing it to compel people to watch it, etc. And of course, that's what he's done. I'm sure a lot of people think that there was some spirit there, but you know, if there's going to be a spirit there, then you need to actually have some feeling. Even with this case that he has this ritual that you're supposed to sign, he was linked to this murder. You're supposed to sign in your own blood. This is classic, goes back thousands of years. And then you have a spot for the demon to sign. But the demon never signs. And then they claim only you will see it. Like Koetting says, I saw the demon, but you can't see it. Well, this is the cop-out. And this is just not true in basic occult science. The fact is, if you have a spirit that is manifesting, many people have seen spirits. As I said, you can feel hot, cold, things get knocked off, sounds, pounds. All these things are part of this process that happens to prove things. And he's a guy that's supposed to be doing this 24/7 now for over 10 years publicly and more years before that. Yet he has absolutely nothing to show for it, not even these little light things that I have shown and these other photographs of these very interesting balls of red light flying around. So all of this stuff he has none of. So his Hollywood people are pretty bad ultimately, even though he put on this reality show drama, which he's acting like this is reality, but it's all, ultimately, it's very faked. And basically nothing is produced. It would cost too much money to put in some sort of special effect, or they can't figure out how to do it to stage the actual spirit appearing. And but none of that happens. So that's the reality of it. But we have to give him credit. He has, but of course, you know, it's always nice to have people backing you up. It's like people who are successful in businesses. Yeah, Daddy gave me $10 million. Well, that's nice. Daddy was involved. Daddy was this. I got money here. I had this connection. And the bottom line, is somehow through his meetings, he met with these people that did everything for him. I doubt that he does anything internet. Well, I don't think he does anything to his websites. I don't think he has any technicalities at all. I don't know. I doubt if he's editing his own videos he puts out. All that stuff, I'm sure, is done by others. He probably doesn't even have the time, but I frankly doubt he's got the technical ability to do that. He does apparently and claims to do writing. Now, we don't know if that writing is his or not. It's kind of childish enough to be his, but there's nothing there. There's nothing of great interest there. He gets a lot of other people to write. I'm not sure what putting anthologies is about, but it's a way of organizing. It's a way of supporting others who are now your buddies because they're working with you. And they have their own unified group for that, and most other people don't. Occultists argue all the time. Nobody gets along. I've had to throw numerous people out of my organization because they don't do anything. Yet he's putting together anthologies of 10 or 12 people because they're organized. And he has the personality. I think people like him. He can organize people. He's very careful to keep his arrogance down, as I've mentioned. He puts on a show, and he is coached. He's 100% coached on all of this stuff. And while he appears to be this single guy, behind the scenes is a mishmash of all kinds of powers in terms of influence and people with different money and skills. And that's what this whole new Satanism about. Satanism used to be just like all of occultism, very fragmented. Nobody got along. It was the Temple of Set against the Church of Satan, and they hated each other. Now these other groups, and then it was the Temple of the Vampire for a long time, but they started to get together. So they started to work with each other. And of course, all of these radical groups tend to work together now. So that's the state of Satanism right now. This satanic practices doesn't go back to the 80s and 90s. There were major, very shocking satanic orders that have been around since the 40s. The Son of Sam case has been proven that there was a huge satanic group behind that, and these are still in operation. The Process Church, which is something that's been talked about, apparently has huge amounts of money, have been linked to all sorts of horrible practices and never, ever have any problems. They're paying everybody off, and it doesn't seem. The so-called, or as I call them, unlaw enforcement, both county or state-based and federal-based, allow them to operate with impunity and do nothing. And they have years and years of this. So this whole organization, which has been linked to all sorts of nasty stuff, nothing happens to them. So, and they are super, super rich from their alleged criminal activities to support their whole operation. So that's what's going on out there. I'm not, none of this is new. As I said, they go back. You're talking about the Son of Sam was in the 70s. These groups were very active in parts of particularly that area of New York for some reason, involved in all sorts of hideous crimes and lots of murder. And the only guy that really got caught was this little goofball, Berkowitz. David Berkowitz, who got caught, and it seems like was certainly one of the very lesser people, and he certainly did kill people. He admits to that, but only a percentage of the murders did he commit. Other ones were committed by others, and nobody's been brought to justice. So, and that's how it is with all the real. We had the McMartin preschool. The evidence there is shocking, which was done by an ex-FBI agent who investigated that case. And found incredible links to satanic practices. So this is not new, and it's going on everywhere. And every once in a while, I get reports from people of groups operating and people finding rooms that are satanic places where they have masses. So, this is very big. People like this. This is a gang. This is a way of empowering yourself. And we're in a world where you can't really get by easy. There's the upper echelon of 5 to 10% of the people that go to Ivy League colleges, get guaranteed jobs, and their whole life is a cashmere sweater from birth to death. And then there's everybody else in between there. And there's a whole bunch of people who've been pushed out of the system, and this is one way of empowering themselves. And certainly this is based in all the lower level aspects of your life: the greed, the sex, the violence, the control. I mean, this is what people really get off on. This is why Islam in general is so popular with people. This is what it ultimately teaches under a very thin veneer of so-called religious practices. Well, the problem is we know what Muhammad's policies and what he did. Muhammad was a historical person, and we have documents of what he did and the wars he committed and the policies he put out, allowing for sex slaves and for murder and everything else. All of this we know. He married a 6-year-old child and consummated it at 8. These are things that we have records of. Well, there's no ifs, ands, and buts to it. You know, the mythical stories of Jesus and whatever the Jews believe in, well, this is all mythical nonsense. We have no really historical benefits to it. Even Buddha, we don't really know if there was a Buddha. Buddha is kind of a title. So I believe that that's just a romantic story that was put out there, and I don't believe there's really anything to being a Buddha. But it's possible there was this dude who started it and put these philosophies. I tend to think it's a big mishmash of teachings that were put together and built up over, I think Buddha goes back 4,000 years. So the bottom line is that this stuff goes way back, and I don't necessarily know of or believe that there was a Buddha. So the problem with everything is that because Buddhism is used by human beings, it becomes very perverted like everything. But we do know the practices of Islam and Muhammad himself, what he did, and there's, from what I understand, some people claim they're not sure if there was a Muhammad, but I think there is. Certainly there seems to be a lot of history tied to him. So this isn't something that is that old. So we have records of this. So all of this is part and parcel of what is going on. So in practice, all religions aren't very good. In practice, Islam talks about a lot of nice stuff. I should say in theory, but in practice, we all know that there's a huge amount of these people, and they have very strange ways of operating, and they're closed societies. But people love this. They love dominating their women and using and abusing them and the rest of their families. They love this. It's part of this low-level thing sanctified by their God. So all of this is part of this radical reality that these people live in, and this backwards way of thinking. But, it boils down that this stuff is very, very evil, like happens in all religions. If you allow religion to break its belief systems, like the Catholic Church, you get into perversions that have nothing to do with Christianity. Obviously, I don't see anywhere in the Bible where it says to molest children. As a matter of fact, they're against any particularly homosexual contact. All of this stuff certainly isn't part of any religion, at least not bluntly. But you set up a place where they bring in a whole bunch of people and tell them they can't have sex. Well, that doesn't work. And that is really not part of original Christianity, where people were allowed to. You got to remember, Christianity is Judaism, and rabbis and Jews are not only encouraged to get married, they're encouraged to have lots of children and have multiple wives. Most rabbis had 2 or 3 wives when you're talking about, quote, Jesus' time. So this just doesn't add up. So when you do that, you're going to have problems. But when you have these radical things and you create a priesthood that can sit around and make up new laws all day, basically you run into problems. And that's what we have here. And these are all serious things. I'm not sure how this affects, but this does affect everybody. This is what's happening in the world, and as a manifesting scientist, you have to figure out what's going on, stay away from that, manifest within your life so that you get what you want and desire, and move from there. But you got to know what these other people are doing. It's not like you can ignore them. I would love to ignore it. These people have invaded the radionic industry and have kept me from producing stuff for many years. They go after the people that make things for us. They do all sorts of things, and they are taking a technology and perverting it from themselves. Now, I can't ignore that as a radionic researcher, the expert in the world. What are we supposed to do with this? So it's not like you can ignore these people. These people have directly go out and hassle people, especially if you have certain abilities like this organization and I do. The point is KARL deliberately caused lots of problems to try and break up my organization, and working with Robert Blanchard, the finest occult translator in history, all of this happened. So even if you want to try it, and I didn't go out seeking this up, I had no interest in Satanism whatsoever. Matter of fact, I even approached the Satanists and said, yeah, I understand you're into your weird shit, but what about occultism? They had no interest in working with and I probably wouldn't have gotten along with them anyway. So the bottom line is they're out there. They're everywhere. Here we get again slashed across all the news is this guy who murdered two women, brutally stabbed them to death in a park in London area. And this has been directly connected to occultism. But it's good that it's been connected to E.A. Koetting, because he is not an occultist. He's a Satanist, which is reverse Christianity. Now, whether they use the trappings of magic, well, magic is like anything else. You can take a car and use it to go to work, or you can take a car and run people down with it. You can use a gun to kill people, or you can use a gun for fun, or to protect yourself, or as had been used for centuries, to provide food. The bottom line is it's individual. Most things in life are neutral, and it's how you use them. There's nothing wrong with apple pie. And you say, well, of course not. Well, if you eat 2 apple pies a day and now you're 100 pounds overweight, well, apple pie has now become evil to you. You're abusing it. So everything can be misused. That's the problem. I believe there's, 500 people a year die from taking too many aspirins. So everything is abused and misused. That's the way everything goes out there. And we need to be very careful with what's going on in general. And you got to be careful not to get involved in these organizations. That's why I've tried to look for the code words: left-handed pass, chaos. Obviously, you know it's Satan. And then they try, Lucifer, and Lucifer was a good guy. Well, we're not going to use Lucifer as a good guy. Can't we use something else? And I don't buy that contrived reality there. So you had to be careful of these terminologies. People suck you into organizations. Aleister Crowley was famous for this with the OTO. The OTO talks about all this metaphysical mumbo jumbo. What it really is, and it is a little bit interesting, the OTO, what it really is a homosexual magic club. And I don't know how much magic involved, but that's basically what it is. The OTO, which is highly sexual, because that's a big thing of what Aleister Crowley was in. Well, he had money. What else does he need? He set up a lot of these magical things so he could get all sorts of sex. And apparently hooked up with all these very unstable, rich women who spent their lives doing nothing, who were bored that he could manipulate. But the OTO starts off with, there's 3 areas of sex magic in the OTO. And the bottom line is it starts off of using sex magic, which is what you study a bunch of nonsense in the OTO, but they take you up to the higher grades. Now, the first stage is masturbation. So, which of course I guess makes sense. You want to first start off, learn to use your sexual energies privately, etc. But masturbation is one of the worst possible things you can do. But let's go past that, particularly magically. There's all sorts of problems there, and I will get my course out on sexuality here, hopefully relatively soon, because I've been saying that for 5 years now. But then they take you up to heterosexual magic. So, I'm not sure how that works in terms of the fact that the next degree is homosexual magic. So, I don't know how you just jump into homosexuality. But I guess if they're doing things in a ritual way, you've been conditioned first with masturbating, you're then doing so-called heterosexual practices, and you're going to have to really condition yourself to drop all your sexual problems. And everybody has these. People are so sexually uptight, it isn't even funny. Everything's a problem. If you tell somebody they look pretty in that dress, that's sexual harassment. What are you saying? You want to fuck me? No, I said it's a nice dress. No, you want to fuck me. That's sexual harassment. So the whole idea is this is all the stuff that goes on, which has been over the top now. So everybody has all these problems that we run into in these realities. And so we have to be very aware of this. So how they manipulate that. But, you got to remember there's practices. I'm assuming there's group meetings. Just because it's heterosexual doesn't mean that they aren't exposing you to some kinky stuff and maybe group sex. So the whole idea is to expand you past this very provincial, what do they call it, vanilla reality that most people's sexuality is, and bring you into these other ones. It's also, I'm not sure it's part of the OTO, but most of these other groups, and particularly with Edred Flowers, otherwise known as Thorson, there's masochism. There's S&M practices, which have become popular now, are part of his practices. He's been involved with that all his life, learning it, of course, in Germany. So where he got involved with the Marquis de Sade Society, etc. And again, that's from his words. So look it up. So, and he has a little book on that as well. One of the worst books you could ever get, which is pretty much everything you get from the Temple of Set is pretty much garbage. So and he has nothing profound. His runic books are just really copies of German books that he copied, even the way the chapters were set up. So there's nothing there, and that's very typical Satanists. Now, I don't think they know much more, but they certainly aren't going to share anything with you. But the OTO then moves you into the highest realm that you raise up to. It takes you into homosexuality, because it's going to be very difficult to sell that in phase 1 or 2. So they have to bring all the, quote, regular people in there and then move you into that. So if you are gay and you get involved in the OTO, well, I don't know what you're supposed to do in the heterosexual phase to function. But I guess the whole idea is to make everybody very bisexual. And that's part of it. So, but that's it, because Aleister Crowley was basically a homosexual. And going through the typical British educational systems, where they take you and put you in with a whole bunch of other people that are the same sex. Well, the only thing that goes on with that, when they're starting to mix, 8 or 10-year-olds in with 12 and 15-year-olds, is buggery that you can't believe. And that's the tradition of British schools. So it's interesting because homosexuality was illegal in Britain until 1969, and it was a horrible crime. Yet the buggery of the British system in particular is astonishing. So how they do that, but that's how, what I'm saying is that's how they manipulate you. They have these books on the OTO that give you all this sugar and pie nonsense, not a mention of their sexual practices. So, come in everybody, we want you, we're all bisexual, so it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl, come on in. We're just a spiritual group. And then, of course, you go through these initiations, which are very sexual. Now, it's a trick. If they tell you that this is what you're going to study and you deal with it, and of course most people are very, very anti-homosexual, and while they're trying to convince people to be more and more bisexual, I'm not sure, I guess you could develop that if you really wanted to, and that's what the OTO is doing. The OTO is developing your homosexual and bisexual realities. That's what they're doing there for the purpose that Aleister Crowley, because Crowley put all this in. The OTO was some, of course, German group that he took over, and then he changed it into this very homosexual-based. So if that's what you're into, if that's what you want to do, fine. But they're manipulating people, that's different. And how many groups do that? I met with a few OTO groups, and quite frankly, there's a bunch of very odd people in those groups. The head of the OTO, or where the corporate headquarters is San Francisco. So that ought to tell you as well. So they are very much, I'm not sure you can mix people and you can create this bisexual reality. I'm not sure how that works. In general, because people are very much against that, trying to mix gay people with straight people. I'm not sure if anybody feels good. Now, there is a certain gay fantasy that they want to have sex with straight people, and this is a big part of their fantasy. So by doing that, Certainly they may feel more comfortable, but I don't know any straight people that feel very comfortable around gay people, especially if you start doing intimate stuff, especially if you're naked. People hate this. People have murdered gay people because this feeling. This is not unusual. So if anything to do with gay generates some very violent and negative attitudes from the straight community. When we advertised our one magically psychic gay book, we have one of these trying to, for that particular population, and we sent this out in an email. It's the first time we've had a whole bunch of people cancel the email accounts. So very strange and very noticeable that people have actually gotten off a mailing list, which is rare. But I mean, this is what they do, and they manipulate you. And if you get involved in groups, this could be a manipulation of moving you into violence, moving you into pedophilia, bestiality. I mean, that's what these people do. They're going to do the opposite of what society thinks good. That's what Satanism is about. If you want to call Satan as the reverse of everything, a black mass is usually they do the reverse of a regular mass. And you got to remember this, it's the Christian religion that they're reversing. So these are all part of what's going on. And so you can get caught up with that. You get caught in a group, they manipulate you, they get you involved in this, assume there are animal sacrifices, and then of course they want to control you. So once they get you involved with pedophilia and these kind of things, well, they own you and you are afraid to leave, and then they have basically blackmail against you. So these are serious things. You got to be careful. And I don't know how many people, but they're not going to be standing around telling you this. So if you're kind of open to metaphysics and you're on a college campus, or there's some sort of ad you answered or some group, well, you have to be very suspicious. We see this even with the kind of suit and tie reality that Scientologists do. Now, Scientology was kind of interesting philosophy in the beginning in some of their books, but I mean, it's pretty much irrefutable at this particular time that, these people are just bloodsuckers. They want every dime you have. They don't have much literature, so they keep rewriting the same books, changing this, changing that. And then they say, well, yeah, I bought that for $5. Well, you need to buy the new edition. This is what has been stated by ex-Scientologists. So they have, they have garages full of the same book that a few pages have been changed. But what's been changed is that $300 book is now $500, and they keep getting all this money from you. And I'm not sure, I don't know of anybody who has benefited from Scientology in a big way. We look at people like John Travolta, his wife. They claim to have all these psychic powers and these healing capacities, and they got these ways of purifying the body. Well, L. Ron Hubbard certainly didn't. He died at 72, pretty much a physical wreck, and had all sorts of other problems. John Travolta's wife died of breast cancer. His son died of another meta. Well, where's all the big magic? Maybe Travolta hasn't reached that level, but isn't there somebody in the church that can do curings? Well, if they could, they would probably have 10 times the membership. They have none of this. It's all claims. There's nothing to back up that they're able to do anything. And most people in Scientology have stated that they've never seen anybody do any magical practices, moving objects, psychokinesis, or anything. They've never seen that in a church demonstration. I don't think they can. Certainly their teachings don't go into that. Their teachings, and L. Ron Hubbard was a pseudo-occultist, but he wasn't that skilled with it. He didn't do that much practice. I mean, he had basic Golden Dawn and some Crowley methods of training. I mean, these things don't produce much. And it's very difficult to get up to the extreme abilities in general, which we're always reaching for here in radionic tech. So the whole idea is that none of these people have been able to show that. And we certainly can see that with the kind of problems, particularly poor John Travolta has, losing his wife and his child, while he's in a organization that claims they have the answers for everything. Well, they don't seem to have the answers for much of anything. So, and here they are. They have these nice big buildings in Hollywood and all over the place. They meet you with, they look like they're college students. They're wearing shirts and ties. All these people are very, quote, normal. And they don't spring anything on you. They slowly move you in, they entrap you, they want to get lots of money from you, and these are all the games that are played with them. But the bottom line is that you're not getting much from it. There are some good teachings there, which are interesting of how to use your mind and focusing and other things. There are some good techniques, but that's with everything out there. The problem is trying to find those and working your way through this web of toxic energy to get a few little nuggets that are stuck in the toxic spider web is not something that anybody really can do. And it's amazing how you don't see their books anywhere or anything else. You have to go to their facilities. They don't seem to be sold, and I don't see advertising of their books or anything else. They have this whole system set up, and they are extremely wealthy over the years. How many followers they still have? They're also infiltrators. I mean, the whole thing that L. Ron set up was this kind of infiltrating group of people, and I guess he was able to do it. Again, you got to give these guys credit for building something from nothing and then doing it. But, the way they do it is through very negative practices. The horror stories you hear about how people are treated in Scientology that never seem to end, by the way, and you don't hear too many good stories either, is really frightening. People sleeping in car parks because they've been punished. They don't own anything. You can't really run away to where? You don't have any money. You don't have any contacts. They alienated you from whatever friends and family you have. So this is the kind of things but they don't do that. They sneak it on you. And so do these other groups. But, if you join a satanic organization, and of course they're trying to make it, the whole idea of Koetting is to make this as common mysticism. Well, we're ascending, we're getting higher consciousness, we're reaching wisdom. This is what he teaches to draw people in. So when people bring up stuff, you say, yeah, but we teach you how to do this, and they add in astral travel and all the other things. But really, that's not what sells them. People want that base domination energy, and everybody wants that. And I'm not sure there's anything wrong with that to a certain level. Should you push your will out there? Should you make sure you get a job? Should you influence a partner? Well, you should. That's how the world is. Other people are doing it all the time. Maybe it's because they have a fancy car, or a fancy college, or they have connections. The bottom line is that these people stay within their cliques, and that's how it works. And they're not going to let you in, so you go to other organizations like this. So this is how it all goes with all of these things. And so you have to be very careful no matter what organization you join or even where you get information from. But generally, obviously, you're safe if you're reading books or watching videos. All that stuff is really not a problem. But when you get past that, and you have to be careful then they start making the absurd and the evil to be commonplace because you see so much of it. This is where the danger comes, and that's what happens. Society now accepts Satanism as, so what? I get this all the time, which is shocking, because when I started out in the 80s and 90s, the worst thing that could happen as an occult organization was to be called black magic or a Satanist. This is what that scumbucket from the BBC in his crap book that has a chapter on me wrote there, was the fact that I was involved in black magic and other things. Well, obviously, that was not true. But he tried to tie me into that because that was something that people were affronted by. So, Louis Theroux, this alleged CIA agent, black magic, etc., this guy is a real scumbucket. So the whole idea is, and I allege he's connected to all sorts of things, all the intelligence communities, etc. He's one of those guys that does funny stories and then he pops up in Nigeria talking to terrorists. Well, of course, you'll talk to the comic boy. And of course, that's all part of the CIA way of operating, just like with Terrence McKenna and so many other people. They worm their way in, and that's how it's done. So all of this is a part of the entire understanding of how these things are. So you have to be careful, and that goes for anything. So you go in there because you want to make your life better. It's amazing how many people were Scientologists. This was a rage, apparently, in the 80s. I never really got into it. I heard about it, but I really found no interest in it. I started to read Dianetics many years ago and then dropped it. I didn't find it very interesting. I was looking for more practical, physical rituals and so forth. But the list of people who were involved in Scientology is shocking, including, because this was the thing you did. Russell Targ, Hal Puthoff, and so many other people were all Scientologists. But, this was popular at that time. They dropped out, but they've had this huge influencing. And Scientology wants to know every time you scratch your bottom. So they get all this information from you and they use it. Obviously, they didn't get much they could use for themselves. So you got to be careful with all of these things. And the odder it is, the carefuler you have to be. But, this is what a lot of people are looking for. If you talk about that you're doing shamanism, meaning hallucinogens, well, you get a lot of followers. If you have something that involves sex, well, gee, you get a lot of followers. So these are the type of things. But what are you getting there, and how are people going to be using these? Do you want to be involved with that? And of course, leaders use this to tie people in as well. So it's all part of the process. So people should be aware. Here's another guy with a very, E.A. Koetting has a very sketchy background. He's got at least 2 convictions, probably more. This guy has a criminal background. He's connected with directly or indirectly with all these other potential bad groups. So, all of this, how does that affect you if you're working with them? Well, if you're reading his books and stuff, well, you're going to get that slant in there. If you go to meetings or get help from him, well, you're indirectly connected to that energy, and this is bad. So it means you're connected to a bunch of very demonic energies, and once you touch into evil, you just can't wash it off, people. You're infected, and it's going to be a serious problem. And that's another thing people don't understand. The people you work with, if you're using one of these radionic machines used by these Satanists, built by these Satanists, programmed by these Satanists, you are going to be affected by it. These are bioconsciousness machines. And we need to understand that, and you have to be careful of who builds them, what's going on if you're using their stuff. And there's a huge evil darkness connected to almost all radionic equipment out there. There's a few people that I appear not to be, but we just don't know what their real beliefs are. I know what my beliefs are, and I express them, but do we know anybody else's? But they apparently don't seem to be involved in these, and there's a few of them. All the other ones are, and they're easily found out. I mean, they even have videos talking with Satanists there, demonstrating technology. I mean, how much more proof do you want? You want to be connected to that energy? Do you want to be connected to evil, nasty people? And the other thing is that they have crap technology. Most of them do. I mean, they're putting out garbage, usually put out by one of the most infantile minds out there that knows absolutely nothing about it. So you're getting a bunch of junk technology. I notice they keep raising their prices to sell you this garbage. And that's what it is. Plain and simple. So all of that goes with that has to be fully understood, and you have to be careful. The whole idea is you don't want to get it. You're trying to make your life better. You're trying to empower yourself to higher levels, and you need that edge. And that's, of course, what radionic tech gives you. We give you that edge, and we don't have any negativity in anything we do. We have some justice and retribution products, and I've already explained that this is part of the real world out there. You should not be victimized, and you should not allow people to step on you. You should fight back, and the best way to do that is through spiritual technologies so you don't get into physical trouble. Now, bad people and people, oh, what do you mean? What are you talking about? If we don't believe in justice and retribution, then let's save trillions of dollars. Let's get rid of the military. Let's get rid of all the police. Let's get rid of all these people. If we don't need that. Oh, we're supposed to allow these corrupt organizations to do their talking for us? Well, they don't. And you have to take your own personal justice. And you have to do it in a correct manner. Use the spirits, the forces of justice, to implement justice to the criminals who have wronged you. And make sure you're doing things based properly. If you're doing this out of ego, or you're attacking somebody because you don't like them, well, these are all the things that now are black magic. But if someone has hurt you and your family, you should spiritually stand up for yourself like we've done in all of life. You don't stand up for yourself on the playground. You're going to get thumped every day. You got to thump others so they leave you alone, and maybe even past that. You got to make sure that people respect your physical abilities. Plain and simple. So that's the way it goes in the schoolyard. Other places, you have to make sure you're doing so. So the whole idea is we all believe in that. But when you cross the line into evil stuff and hurting people, and as I said, Koetting has stated, he picked a girl and they messed with her. They hurt her for no reason. This is the guy. And he does this all the time. You want to be associated with the guy? You want this guy to take his material? You want to do this? I mean, it's in his books. Not to mention, there's nothing in his books of value. It's all rehashed nonsense except for these invented demons he's found. Well, there's a lot more demons than that, EA. I hate to tell you that. And what you found was the Salvation Army of energy spirits out there, the lowest possible levels that a guy like you can connect to. So, this is all very important information. I know this has been longer than I wanted to do, but there's very good information here that you have to understand as a person navigating your way through the quote New Age. What are these people? There's a lot of New Agers who are very deceptive and bad people. They're just basically bilking you money. Are they doing anything? Is there any proof of it? Are their systems any good? Well, they're good marketers, a lot of them. So you have to be careful there as well, what kind of people they are. Now, the bottom line is that the human race is a rotten, evil race. It's completely and totally infected with evil, the Wendigo reality, and you need to understand that. So you should always go into anything you do cautiously. And you have to find out what works for you. Because in the end, that's all that matters. If you have 50 people that say this tool works, well, you think that that means it'll work for you, or at least there's a good percentage. Well, that's not necessarily true. This whole field is complicated. We're trying to make technologies that work for everybody to a certain level, and we've really done that. I can't remember anyone who hasn't gotten something out of the use of radionic tech products. Now, the problem is everybody wants the Aladdin's lamp. They want to rub the lamp and it pops up in front of them. Now, that's a great fantasy, and that comes from the French who invented that story, not from traditional paganism from the Middle East. That was added to that at a time when Middle East paganism was popular. So they added all these stories written by the French. So the point is, life isn't like that. And I have yet to see any staggering manifestations from people that are direct. It's all nonsense. So, things like that don't. If it does, why would you possibly sell it? What you're selling is stuff that works for you, that gives you that edge, that benefit, and you know others can get that same edge and benefit. If anybody has anything that will produce instant results, well, they're not going to sell it, period. It's just kind of as simple as that. It's not complicated. What is complicated is the fact that thinking in the back of your mind that this is that, and this guy is selling this for what reason? Well, that's a good question. What reason would you sell it for? So it doesn't make any sense. If you want to help people, and if I had technologies to manifest millions of dollars, I would. And I would give a lot of money away. I would open up schools. I would help people learn things. I would teach them ways of taking care of themselves. I'd do a whole bunch of things with money, but I wouldn't give it to you because most people are going to blow it. They're going to spend it on drugs and whores and crap, and they're going to buy gold-plated toilets, all the crap that low-level people do. So I would never do that. So why would you offer such a great technology, how to win the lotto? Why do people pay people to give them numbers? Well, this can't possibly work. And why would you sell a number for $10 or $50 or $1,000 that wins the lotto when you would make 10 times, 100 times, a million times that? It doesn't even make any sense whatsoever. But you're under the impression that, yeah, this is just some very generous guy that wants to help people. And he's just kind of covering his cause. Well, this is how the human mind works. Well, it doesn't work like that because these kind of things are never given to people for free. Nothing works like that. All these systems, all the what you see on YouTube and all these, how to make money, all this stuff, well, there is something to it, and it gives you a little bit of a foundation to get going, but they're not producing that kind of money. If they were, why would they bother teaching it? Not the fact that, boy, I want to help people. There are billions in dollars in training people. I don't know how many people know that, but it's a huge industry. I think it's 50 or 80 billion dollars a year are spent on courses. It's a huge area where people buy stuff. So that's why they're doing it. Now, is there something to it? Well, it gives you the start. I think those things are great information. But is there much there in the bigger? No, these systems don't work like I tell you. There's always a little glitch in it, a little problem, a little thing that, you make $10,000 in sales. The problem is your costs were $11,000. So these are the kind of things you run into that we all have to be aware of. So I think it's important to understand all this, and EA is one of these people out there, and what potential problems you can get that people should be aware of. But know the facts on this guy. This is basically a two-time loser. He's been convicted of crimes at least twice. He's involved in this. He's pulling off his own little thing. But the bottom line here is that there are big, powerful people behind him, and always has been. And that's what makes all of this very interesting and, to a certain extent, scary. Until next time.